Okay, we are right on time, but I know there's more joiners, so I'm just going to give it one more minute, and then we'll get rocking. And it is so good to see everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. So thank you all for joining. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and get rocking. Again, thank you for joining. My name's Rhamy Alejeal. I'm the CEO of People Processes. I see a couple of clients in here, a couple of others. It is just wonderful to have you all join. If What we're going to be talking about today is navigating difficult conversations with direct reports. So having those tough conversations, why you have to have them and how to do it. Before we do, I just want to say this is a really hard part of leadership and management. And I've been there where this is something that I have put off for weeks rather than actually address it. I had an employee go through a divorce, and for 3 months to say that their work product wasn't great, uh, vast underestimation. Just an absolute crap show. And it's happened to all of us, and figuring out how to navigate those kind of things, whether that's family issues, changes in behavior, sheer just not getting it, is really tough. And so I've used this framework in the past, and managers use it in the past with their employees, found it to be very, very effective. So I understand where you're at, and this is one of the hardest parts of leading companies and leading employees. So thank you for attending. I hope this will help prepare you for it. Before we dive into the first steps in it, I would love for you to grab a pad and pen or grab a notepad and your computer and think about one thing you would change in your workplace right now if you could. These sorts of tough conversations may be something you have with a direct report, and that's what this is going to focus on, but sometimes you have to manage up too, or sideways, or to a client. I don't know. But the conversational framework, whether you're talking to your employee, your subordinate, your superior, coworker, or heck, your spouse, it's kind of always the same. The framework applies to any of these kind of tough conversations you need to have. So try, before we dive in too deep, to think about what it is that you're targeting so that when question time comes, if something in here you can't see how it fits in there, I'd love to be able to address that. Okay? We're going to talk about some core principles. Before we get into the actual framework, this isn't really in the guide, but I just want to give you these 4 key steps that are really important when we think about having these tough conversations. The first and the most important is to reframe these conversations in your mind as a collaborative discussion, as one where you're working with someone to come to a common goal. These are not disciplinary conversations. These are not something where you're a winner or a loser because you're going to convince somebody of it. Whenever you're having these sorts of conversations in the workplace, if you can think of it as a conversation where you're trying to align yourself with an employee, to coach them, to help come to a solution you both like, as a guide rather than an adversary, it will go a lot further. So as you're thinking about scoping these things out, realize that even if it's something they're doing stupid over and over, the purpose of the tough conversation is to get you both to agree on something, right? Not to have them defeated. If you do, you just have a defeated employee, and that doesn't do very good at all. Secondly, we want to always address the issue. Whenever we're having these conversations and we talk about what we want to try to fix, you want to be at the simplest level possible. You want to make these conversations as easy as possible so that you can have them often. When you're working in a relationship with somebody, and again, this applies to your kids and your wife and your employees, you want to work at the top of the pyramid in front of us. When people make mistakes, again, in all courses of life, there are many levels that they could be making those mistakes at. Maybe they just made a bad choice one time. The conversation then is relatively simple. Hey, this choice wouldn't have done the same thing. Let's make sure we don't make those choices in the future. Maybe it's a series of choices. Maybe it's habitual. Every time this comes up, you're doing this thing. Deeper than that, and you start getting to things like personality traits. You start thinking, this person doesn't have the extroversion necessary to be able to deal with complex social problems. Sometimes these are the worst conversations. Maybe you're talking with somebody and it's like they're just too stupid to understand this. Maybe I'm too stupid to understand this, who a person is. And sometimes it's even deeper than that, how the world works. When you're dealing with problems at work, it should be the top 3 items, probably not the bottom 3. If you're working, if you find yourself trying to address a behavioral problem that is related to how that person sees the world, it's probably beyond what you as a manager can address. I wanted to give this framework because it works in all cases, again, including spouses and kids and parents, all those pieces. And sometimes you have to dig a little bit deeper. But most work conversations should be focused on one of those top 3 items. And if you find yourself trying to address something deeper than that, you need to take a step back and see if it can be addressed at a higher level. Another note, these conversations should be done in private. When you have to reprimand, when you have to figure out a new path forward, you don't want the complexity of managing people's relationship with a group. Okay? Praise is great, amplifies recognition, motivation. When you praise something and you do it in public, more people will behave that way. But corrective conversations need to be done in private. And finally, whenever you're having these conversations, you almost always have to reassure that you love the person or that you are on their side and that you're addressing a behavior. A nice way to think about this is to use love and hate in the same sentence. I love your enthusiasm, but I hate when it distracts from priorities. Or I love your dedication here to work, but I hate that you constantly appear tired and burned out, right? These are just 4 quick overarching things to keep in the back of your mind. You love the person, you hate the behavior. You reprimand privately, but praise publicly. You want to work at the highest, simplest level problem that will solve the problem. And you want to remember that you're not having a confrontation here that has a winner or a loser. There is no winning this. You're trying to collaborate together. Those are just 4 keynotes. Okay? Now, let's actually get to the framework. What is it that you can do, the process you as a manager can follow in order to have a tough conversation? Step 1 is preparation. Okay? It is so common, and we get this email. I see some of our clients in here. I've got an employee and she's pissing me off, right? That's the problem. And you got to take a minute to work with that person to really figure out where the issue is. And this is our preparation. One side note, for those of you who are clients already, we have built this all into a tough conversations framework guide, which is now part of our BP action toolkit. And it actually walks through this and is very helpful for training managers. They can, of course, watch this webinar. We will distribute this afterward. But when you're thinking about actually how to do this, we actually go through each one of these steps in a nice PDF so they can work them out. So if you're taking notes on like the step-by-step, I'm going to send you all the action guide. And it's something that, again, we can utilize at the business partner level or in your manager training that they can keep kind of on their desk when they need to have these conversations. And that's what we're going through now. We're going through the actual guide. Step 1, define the problem. What is the actual issue you need to address, and how is it impacting the individual, the team, or the company? If you write down that the issue is they piss you off, you're dealing with the level of who that person is. Probably need to take a step back and think about it in terms of a habit, a series of choices, or a singular choice. Look at the issue and try to really define it. Sometimes these are easy. You're tardy a lot. I can't count on you, right? The impact is when we schedule you, your teammates roll their eyes because they know you're not going to be there on time, right? Sometimes this is more difficult. We recently had this conversation internally with a very skilled employee who we love, who's enthusiastic and friendly in a lot of ways, but has a tendency to be very sarcastic and roll their eyes and just, I don't even know exactly how to describe it. It wasn't my direct report, but there's just a negativity about them. We're not going to make that in time. There's no way we're going to get this done. And coming to that sort of definition of where the problem is a big part of this prep. It's not that they're not good at their job. It's not that they're in fact really negative in actuality. They're happy to take on extra work. They're really good employees. But in a group setting, they're just kind of negative Nancy's, right? So we have to talk about the habit of when new opportunities come or when challenges come, how they are viewed as a leader, even though they're not a manager, how they do this. We need to define the situation and what effect it has on the team. Once you have that written down, I want you to take a minute to think about your emotional triggers. As the person having the conversation, what emotions are being triggered in you, and how can you regulate your responses to ensure the conversation is productive? Leadership is everything. A lot of times the problem that your employee is having is your fault, even if it's their problem and they have to fix it. If you were a better leader or your company was better structured, they wouldn't have that problem. And there's a degree in which there's always a sense of self-responsibility or shame. Sometimes there's a lot of conflict about this particular problem if you know what the issue is. And you need to take a minute to recognize what emotions they generate in you. I am someone who's a very positive, like, I get really excited by shiny objects, and I always want to move on to the next big thing. And I'm not someone who's really comfortable doing the same thing every day. I like having big explosive stuff. And when I'm in this ideation phase of let's do this and this and this, I have a really negative reaction to Debbie Downers. Like, well, that's how are we going to accomplish that without the this? I don't know. We'll figure that out. So to some degree, I have to recognize that if I'm going to confront an employee over this, I may be having an emotional reaction that's beyond the norm. Once you've looked at that, I want you to think about their perspective. What might they be thinking about their situation? Take their perspective fully. How do they see it? And what emotions might they be feeling? A great example of this is like in our company. Let's say that there's a project manager who's really responsible for making Charisse, I see you in the call, Charisse happy, right? And I'm like, hey, the problem is Charisse is not getting her stuff on time. And I want to confront them about this consistent failure. And when I go to them, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, look, our tax department is always late. Or it's not me, it's not in my control, it's someone else over here. The marketing department overpromised. People will make excuses, and sometimes they're very reasonable. So you need to prepare and think about what their perspective is going to be. In this case, I would say, well, I understand. We all use the same tax department, though, and none of the other project managers have this problem. I talk to the tax department, and they hate working with you. You need to create relationships and stakeholders so that the tax department doesn't keep putting your tickets at the bottom of the queue. That's your job. You don't have to just manage the client. You have to manage the other people inside the organization and make sure you're friends. I'm just using an example. Our tax department is great. Nobody stress about my tax department right now. But I just wanted to say, you have to take a minute to think about how they're going to react and what emotions they might be feeling. One of the questions I got in preparation for this, someone asked, is how do you deal with it when it's someone's personal business affecting their work? I've had an employee going through a divorce, and again, it's not a great, it can have a pretty negative effect. And if you're going to call them out on work problems, right? How are their emotions going to be tied up in all of those things? It happens. You need to take a minute to think about it. One thing is that, and we'll talk about how to deal with emotional reactions later, but as a reminder, you're trying to collaborate towards a solution, okay? So recognize that there are challenges, both from work, from other departments they can't control, from clients who won't respond to emails, from patients who are losing their dang mind, from their family who's driving them crazy and they can't sleep because they got a newborn baby. Those are challenges. And your job as a coach, as a guide, as a mentor, is to help work through and find a solution that you can all agree on. Before you go in, try to define your desired outcome. Not necessarily how you're going to get there, not how they're going to deal with not being able to sleep at night, but what is the change that you want to see, and what should they understand or commit to after the conversation? What are you looking for their promise to be, right? I promise I will fix this because blank, by doing blank. This is all prep work. These are all just things to jog your mind. Literally in the guide, it's just 2 little lines. You're not looking to write an essay on this. You don't need ChatGPT, okay? You can just write a couple of words. And it's to put you in the right frame of mind to get to that solution. And then the key is the opener, okay? How are you going to actually start this conversation? One really helpful exercise to me that I do with clients who bring us in on this all the time is, what is it you really want to say, but probably won't say after thinking this through, okay? But like, how can you just give it to me plain? I need you to show up to work on time. I need you to stop rolling your eyes whenever I'm in front of you in a group meeting. I need you to sit up straight and stop being a little whiny, whatever. Fill it all in, however you're going to say it. Don't be afraid, because getting that on the piece of paper or in your prep will really help crystallize for you what you're trying to accomplish here. Take a minute, once you write that down, to go back to our 4 best practices. You want to do this privately. You want to think about this collaboratively. And are you working at a simple enough level, right, that this is something you can actually accomplish at work? It's really important. I've had people, one of the, an issue we had once was with a client where a manager consistently was really rude to men, not rude to women. But they had enough consistent issues where they felt like this person worked really negatively with other men and treated them differently. So is that a single action? No. Is it a series of choices? No. Is it a habit? Maybe. But to a large degree, this had to do with how this employee saw the world and felt like they needed to assert dominance in a very different way. It's a very difficult discussion to have if you're going to work at that level. And so what we advised was, I want you to work at a simpler level and recognize and let them know that you see this pattern, but that's not your job to fix. You want to work at a simpler level. If you have a manager who's not getting along with other managers because maybe they want to control everything and they don't trust other people, and they consistently don't trust other people, they want to do everything themselves. Well, you can choose to work at the level of who they are as a person and how they see other people and whether or not they learn to trust people because of their parents. But Lord, that's a tough conversation and probably not going to be very successful. Instead, we got to talk about the decisions or the choices they make. Simply, when you have this much work, I need you to make sure you're delegating more effectively. Maybe we need training on these items. And try to keep out of the deep weeds. It's hard, okay? But just something to think about. Once you have your initial thoughts unfiltered, you want to revise it, taking those into account. Okay. Another way, once you kind of have laid out your discussion, you have to think about how you're going to establish empathy and connection with your direct report. It's a way of opening the conversation. Now, the way that I prefer to do it, and the way that is often most effective, is using a first-person approach, a personal story. Share a personal experience used to create rapport. I used to struggle with time management too. Here's how I improved. It's important, again, to make sure they understand that you know them, you care about them, it's the behavior that's the problem. And by showing that you've been through it yourself, you can establish significantly more understanding and connection. At the beginning of this very talk, I told a personal story. And throughout the talk, I've told third-person stories of where other people have utilized the same approach to find success. Okay? You don't have to do that, but it really helps put you in that collaborative mindset and reassures the employee that this is something you've been through either yourself or with another report and you came out okay. All right? If none of that works, if you've never stolen from your employer and the conversation is about all the stuff they're stealing from you, the direct approach is fine, okay? We have a problem, and we're just going to knock right in there. But in the Tough Conversations Framework Action Guide, we actually have a section where we ask you to decide on which one of those 3 approaches and go ahead and queue up a story. Okay? If you can have a story and have done your prep work, the rest of the conversation flows very easily. This is all prep. We haven't talked about the conversation at all. Okay? This is to get it right in the executive's mind and to give them a tool to establish connection. Now it's time for the actual conversation. It's 5 parts where we're going to establish a shared purpose, present the facts, explain the impact, ask open-ended questions, and set a clear path forward. The shared purpose. Start with a mutual goal. So once you've established your connection with your story or laid out the problem specifically, you have to come back and make sure that you're on the same page about the goal. Most of the time, this is relatively quick, right? So for example, I have an issue with my assistant, and it's like consistently we're seeing this issue. It's a, it's a habit or a series of choices where you're constantly having this problem. We want to take a step back and figure out and remind that we have a shared purpose here. This also works with your spouse, right? I want to be married to you in 3 years. I want us to have wonderful kids, and I think you do too. I want us to, enjoy our time after work and not just be sitting in the office all day. Maybe a little too personal. But make sure you agree on the purpose. So with a direct report, you want to reassure them and verify that they actually care about the job. I want to make sure that you want to be part of this team. Do you agree with me that, making sure your teammates trust you and that you trust your teammates is a good shared purpose, that we want to do that together? And they'll almost always agree if you pick something reasonable. But there's a reason we do this. One is it aligns goals, and the other is about 1 out of 7 or 8 times, they won't agree. They'll go, no, I don't care if my team trusts me. Their job is to follow. And you'll realize that you're working in a very different place than you were. Maybe you talk to your spouse and you say, hey, in 3 years, I want to make sure I'm happy and married. And she's like, I'm not into that. And it's like, okay, maybe this conversation isn't going to go anywhere. Okay. So take a minute and make sure you're sharing purpose. Then state the fact, the behavior. Without emotion, this is the problem. Okay. So we know that there's an issue. We've defined it and say, here is my issue. Some of these are very complicated. You're not talking about the why. You're not talking about how you're going to solve it. You're going to talk about the issue. Everyone in this department thinks you're out to get them. Everyone in your department thinks the people over there suck. And that's a problem for me. Or maybe it's a frontline employee and it's like a simple one-off choice. Maybe it's a series of behaviors. But you want to make sure that they understand this is the problem that we're working together to solve. And then take a minute to move to the impact. Why is this a problem? You can't just say it's a problem because I say it's a problem. You can say it's a problem because, hey, new employees who've only been here 8 weeks already know about the drama between you two. They think that we're a dramatic workforce mainly because the two of you are constantly bickering and fighting. I don't really care why at this point. I just need you all to solve that problem, which is, as leaders, you're creating an environment where people pick sides or teams. Or whatever. I'm just using random examples. But these are things that we've come across. But you want to make sure that they understand the impact of those things. And then this is where the conversation goes wrong 99% of the time for people who are untrained. Ask open-ended questions to collaborate on a solution. You are not here to say, you will no longer be late because we're having the discipline conversation. You are instead asking, what's going on with this? What obstacles are preventing you from fixing this? Where did this come from? How can I help? What should we change? What are your thoughts about this? Again, imagine it's your spouse and it's like, there's no winning. If you defeat them and they agree with you to come in on time every day, they've just been defeated. They're not collaborating with you. They're not part of your journey. They're just beaten. I want these curtains, you want those curtains. I won. You didn't win. You never win against your wife or your husband, right? There's no winning. There's just hopefully us agreeing on both of us winning. And that's how it is with employees too. So this is the most crucial part. If you need to have a disciplinary conversation, you should probably have had this at least once or twice beforehand. This is the verbal warning to a degree. You're coaching and you're guiding to come to a solution together. Then the biggest issue after not having the conversation at all is not setting a clear path forward, right? You need to turn it into action steps and accountability. You need a plan in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Normally, whenever these conversations happen, what it means is more time from you as a manager to check in. All right, I think we agree on what the next steps are and what this looks like. Let's meet again 1 week from now, just for 15 minutes. Check in on this one issue. Make sure we're going the right way, right? Maybe if it's with your boss and you're going the other way, you need them to stop sending you ill-defined projects that don't work, and you guys get agreement. Say, well, all right, well, let's talk about it 1 week from now and just make sure that anything that's come up this week, we've got a real clear plan on so that it's delegated. I can actually deliver. Okay? But you got to set those follow-ups. A few things that come up, again, happens with conversations with your kids, with your parents, with your employees, with your boss, with your coworkers, with your clients. Handling defensiveness. This isn't my fault. I don't want, it's not my fault. I'm not going to do it. Why are you even bringing this up with me? Jackie does the same thing. I'm not here to criticize in this conversation. I'm here to figure out how we fix it. Do you agree that this is a problem? Whether it's your fault or not, this is a problem. We got to figure it out. Okay. Help me figure it out. Collaborate. What can I do to fix it with you? Silence. This comes up often. You're in a video call or you're in person and they're just sitting there with their arms crossed looking off in the distance. Okay? Ask open-ended questions. I have to get them to talk. You have to stop talking and just listen for a little bit. Some people respond a lot faster than others. I've had meetings where 60 seconds passed with zero response, and then a comprehensive, good engagement happened. Okay? It's just different people talk at different speeds. I answer before you finish, and it's a problem. Some people need a minute to really just take a break. So ask an open-ended question and be silent. Listen. If there's a strong emotional reaction, right? If we're talking tears, screaming, whatever, obviously physical safety is a whole nother piece, but have no issue saying, look, I can see you're completely frustrated and, this is too much. Let's take a break. Why don't we come back in 15 minutes and talk again? Normally that's appropriate. Again, maybe different if it's your spouse, but with your worker, you need them to maintain a veneer of professionalism most of the time. And it's normally better just to say, take a break, we'll come back, we'll talk more in 15 after you get your head together. It's okay. That's not supposed to be there. On your follow-up, those items that we talked about, that action plan, you need to set checkpoints to follow up. You need to document any agreements, and you need to reinforce positive change. This is one of the key factors as well that I see. If you're going to have this conversation and you come to a solution, you're going to have that follow-up in a week, right? Reward the little incremental behaviors, if at all possible. Maybe they've been targeted once or twice a week for a month, and then you go 5 days without it. Recognize that, even if it was sheer luck. You have to give recognition for the little stuff for the big things to happen. So one of the key pieces there. The other is if you did come to an agreement, it's really good to document it. It can be an internal document. Managers, what you prefer is to send an email clarifying what you all agreed to and sending it off. And sometimes that is appropriate, but sometimes these are personal issues or discussions where you're having real trouble there. It's okay to summarize it yourself and add it as a note in the people processes system, or send it to us and say, just an internal note. No problem at all there. Okay? Now, I know I was hoping to be done 4 minutes ago on this, so I'm running a bit behind, but are there any key takeaways that you guys go, yes, that's the piece I needed? If you see it in the chat, I would so appreciate you sharing it. And I'm also open on any Q&A. If you have any pieces you want. I have the time. We booked 30 minutes, so I don't want to go over. For any of the rest of you who need to go, makes total sense. We will send the recording and that tough conversation framework to all the attendees. But in the meantime, you've got me. So are there any key takeaways? Drop them in chat. That would be lovely. And any Q&A. Anybody who says, this framework doesn't really affect me or doesn't really do what I need. Or if you want to role play one out, I'm happy to do it. Just unmute and start talking. Please. Anyone?
Is it time? Yeah. Okay.
Hey,
Sounds good. Hi.
hi.
So let's say you follow the framework and you have the conversation, and then how many times would you recommend repeating this conversation before something else would happen?
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. So, in the end, business does come down to value. Okay. So, you can almost rate it on two scales. How big is the problem and how valuable is the employee? This is going to be most valuable on little, consistent problems for a very valuable employee. It'd be worth having the conversation multiple times if it's a relatively well-defined issue and the employee is very valuable. If they're not, and the problem is big, don't have the conversation in the first place. Pip them and call it a day or terminate them. And I think it's important that managers and executives use that discretion. Okay. We are in the end here for either whether it's a nonprofit to accomplish their mission or a for-profit to create a successful business. And that's why this framework works really well for tough conversations. But the decision on whether you should have one or let them go, that's a different one. I think this is probably most useful with your spouse. You're going to have the conversation 45 times before you make that final call, right? But when it's a new employee who's been there 2 weeks and they've missed 3 days because they, can't get effective car rides, and I, eh, eh, goodbye, find a new one. I'm the HR guy. I'm like, fire them, because it's not worth the investment. This is a lot of work from a manager, so let them go. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, rewarding small behaviors is a key part of this, and again, it works in all your tough conversation frameworks. One reason we have you write that down in the framework is because if you don't, you won't think about it, and it's the number one thing that's going to change their behavior. If you notice they're doing the right thing just once, and then praise them publicly for it, oh man, it's the win.
I have something.
Yes, ma'am.
A couple of things. One is that the takeaway is around the impact. We have had a giving and receiving feedback training before where, and I think this really works well, where the impact on the organization or the department that the behavior affects is very, good for the person to know that whatever they're doing, this is how it's affecting everybody. So, it would behoove all of us if this behavior changed. That's one thing. And of course, the delivery is important. But moving on, the other thing that I think that I have noticed around having these difficult conversations is around accountability. Because what we stress is we want you to have accountability for what you do so that we can move on to the solutions. Because if there's no accountability, there's no reason for you to do anything any differently. So my question is, how do you get people to actually own what has happened?
Very good question. So you're having a tough conversation about X, and they're going, well, it's not really my fault, right? And it's like you're saying, well, I don't even want to move on to the solution until they accept responsibility. And I can understand that. I think impact, as you mentioned, is a key part of that. One thing that is very helpful in business, nonprofit and for-profit, is focusing back into the mission, like why we're doing what we're doing. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Getting agreement on that purpose, and then defining the problem. There are many times where it's not their fault, but it is their responsibility. And that's a phrase we use often in my company, which is, I don't disagree with you that this really isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix. And that's part of the job. And normally you can get agreement on that, right? And so I would say, of course, what you want is an employee who takes accountability, who takes the world on their shoulders and really realizes that everything we do impacts everybody else. But I will tell you, I have had conversations in the past where I don't need them to agree with me that they should fix this in the past. I need agreement that they're going to fix it now, right? And a lot of things in life are that way, especially if you work with people for years, decades. Like, it's not really their fault. We all sat there and watched it happen 65 times, but it's a problem now. And can we get agreement on fixing it? Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or ideas, key takeaways? You are more than welcome to head on out if I've taken up your time. I appreciate you attending so very much. Wonderful. I will be sending out a recording of this along with the Tough Conversations Action Guide as a reminder for those of you who managers inside other organizations and those people processes and provide this sort of help. We so appreciate working with all our clients who joined the call today, and we very much appreciate any sort of referrals or growth that if you see this as something that we could help fix in a friendly organization, we would love to do so. Thank you all so much. We'll wrap it up here.